we'll talk about the McKinsey Way, a book developed from the McKinsey and Company, where the consultant talks about their experience in the real world and the real business problem they have solved in the past. Uh, it is one of the great guide for aspiring researcher and consultant who want to pursue their career in the consulting field. When I joined the consulting firm 3 years ago, my manager gave me this book to understand the thing that are not seen by person but we can read in the book. It is quite well written book, and if I give the one sentence summary of the book, that would be the techniques of top consultant for effective strategic thinking and problem solving using practical cases. This is the guideline for that search. So in the video we will talk about three things: storyline and key concept, insight and takeaways, and why researchers should read this book, why we should read this book. McKinsey and the McKinsey Way book does not follow a traditional storyline. Instead, it presents a guide to the strategies and technique used by McKinsey and Company consultants based on the real cases and the practical scenarios. For example, it talks about how a consultant goes to the client office, talk to them, interview them, draw the insights from them, and present ideas to the client in the same manner. There are some crucial concepts in the book which are very beautifully designed, written, where we need to understand to develop our mindset and analytical skill in the future. Those are MISI principle, the pyramid principle for structural communication, the hypothesis driven analysis, and etc. We will talk about this in other separate videos, but let me just give you a quick crux of what MISI and pyramid principle means. MISI is something that we call mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive, which means if we have three options, let's say three options, all of them has to be mutually exclusive, meaning all of them has to be unique, and they have to be comprehensive enough to give all the scenarios. That's why it's called MISI principle. The pyramid principle is something that if you imagine a pyramid, at the top it is very uh, narrow, thin, like a pointed, and in the bottom it is wider. It means by our communication should be something like a very particular topic, a specific topic at the top, and when we go down, we need to widen our explanation, like in a wider arrow. The more we go to the bottom. The third one is hypothesis driven analysis, which means whatever we say, we have to back by some hypo. Sometimes we don't have a key structure how to go, and we need to develop a hypo for that and move along with the hypo. The key insight and takeaways from the book are it gives the behind the scene look at the strategies that offers readers like us a very deep understanding of how to approach complex problems. For example, it talks about issue tree, which means that we have a issue, a very big issue. We would divide that into several segments like sub issues A, B, and C. So let's say the issue is X. We divide that X into three segment A, B, C, and under each A, B, C issues, we talk about the sub issues like D, E, F, and moving on. So what it's the book says in a very beautiful manner is that once we simplify our issue, uh, almost 50% of work is done. There are three key takeaways for someone like us. The first is structured thinking. We will learn how to break down the challenging issues using techniques like MISI principle, the 80-20 rule. It also enhances our analytical skill. 80-20 rule means something that let's imagine a business. Uh, normally in most of the cases, the 80% of the revenue would come from 20% customers, and just the vice versa, just the opposite, which means that 20% of the major investor would own 80% of our asset, something like that. So we will learn those thinking style in from the book. Effective communication, of course, not just for researchers, for all the professional out there, communicating in a very effective manner is most important. It also helps us how do we deliver our finding to the client, or let's say to our project manager. There's a topic called answer first. We use that topic in consulting a lot of times, which means that, for example, if someone says do you like rain, in a lot of Asian countries what we say is Rain is quite good. We move on to, we can get a good weather, cold, something like that, and only give the answer later. But in consulting, what I say is give the answer first. Yes, I like raining because this, something like that. Hypo-driven approach, that means by there are a lot of problems which are quite difficult at first, but once we have a good hypothesis, hypothesis can give us direction to move in the right path, then we can make the decision making quite easy, quite effective, and quite time saving. And finally, the key topic for today's slide, which is why we should read this book. So I have summarized those answers into five major points. Of course, it can be subjective, but as a researcher, as a aspiring consultant, I think these five are the top skill that we can achieve once we read the book. Strategic framework is the first. Of course, there are a lot of examples, real life cases where the consultant would use some kind of framework that can help us to, structure our problem and then approach them with a fresh mindset. Analytical technique, concept like Missy principle, hypo-driven analysis, 80-20 rule, other 3 C's techniques, those can help us to enhance our analytical skill to uncover deeper insights. Effective communication, this is self-explanatory. The more we read the book, the more it can help us to develop a way that can communicate our finding clearly and persuasively. Real world application, there is example I remember. One day a consultant went to a client office and then had an interview with the client staff in the office room. The staff behaved quite hostile. She was very nervous to talk to him, but when they met on the lunch at the same day, maybe 2 3 hours later, she was more open to discussion, which mean by not everything we can make very serious or very professional to get a lot of informations. People are quite easy when we are talked in other setting other than office and things. Last uh, last thing that can help us from this, we can get help from the book, is holistic perspective. This book can encourage us to approach holistically to the end problems, like 360-degree view, or we call it bird eye view, or let's say a bigger, broader approach to our problems, like from all the angles, the external environment, inner environment. It it can help us to cover all aspects and key points. That's why this is quite important. These are my subjective analysis for the book and recommendation for the fellow researchers. Your opinion can be different from mine in this case, but I think this is quite a good fancy book, free of course. I would request everybody to read this book and then get major insight from their side. And if there is anything in any book suggestion that you have, please feel free to share with us. Thank you all.